Good evening. This is the City of River Falls Utility Advisory Board meeting for November of 2016. Christy, would you please call the roll?
Richter? Here. Swanson? Here. Odine?
Here.
Hanson?
Here.
Peterson?
Here.
Toom?
Here.
Macheski?
Here.
I need a motion for the approval of the minutes of October 17th, 2016 that is in your packet.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to the approval of the minutes for October 17th, 2016. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to address the board? Okay, if not, we'll move to the consent agenda, which includes the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission for September 20th, 2016, and the Powerful Choices Committee minutes from October 13th, 2016. We have a motion to acknowledge the receipt of those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to acknowledge the receipt of the minutes. Is there any discussion regarding the motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The new part, the resolutions, the first one is regarding the North Interceptor Sewer Project. We have recommendations to consider regarding that in number 2 in your packet.
Grant, Reed Ronsky, our city engineer, is here today.
Yes.
And he would like to have our consultants, TD&K, Ron Quanbeck, and Eric and Matt, will be here to give a little presentation. So, Reed, thanks for coming today and bringing your crew.
We'll turn it over here to Ron. As you know, about a year ago, we were in here talking about this North Interceptor project. Some of you are some new faces, I believe, on the board, but this project actually goes back perhaps 10, 12 years with some of the utility board members as far as planning for the future of the North Interceptor. So we retained TKDA in March to look into various aspects of that, from the condition of the downstream existing pipe to what we do when the north lift station is at its capacity. And Ron's here to take us on our journey on the North Interceptor routing, and then we'll talk a little bit about the St. Croix Street outfall.
Chair, board members, I'm Ron Quanbeck with TKDA. With me this evening are Eric Klingbeil with our company and also Matt Wassman. We will explain a little bit about what we're doing. The project overall had several parts to it, including eliminating the lift station on Main Street at the Kinnickinnic River and replacing it with a gravity sewer, looking at the St. Croix Street outfall to determine if we could improve the function of that for water quality and quantity, and also look at the area downstream from there all the way beyond the power plant and see what the condition of the pipe was, what the route that made sense there is, and go through that. The third of those we discussed back a few months ago, and I made a presentation to you about that. The first one, the lift station, will have a little presentation by Eric, and we'll have a recommendation to identify a route that we would have that gravity sewer go. The second one, we're looking at what concept to choose for the St. Croix Street outfall. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric Klingbeil with TKDA. I was the engineer for the North Interceptor routing study. Just to kind of rehash what Ron and Reed have already said, this project was needed because the existing lift station on site will not have capacity for the ultimate build-out of the north area as denoted by an Ayers Associate report from March of 2009. And also the lift station is aging. And with any lift station, especially older ones, the maintenance needs gets greater and greater as the years go by. This shows the ultimate expanded area. Let's see if the mouse will show it up. Eventually, this pipe and lift station would need to have taken all of the sanitary sewage from the entire pink area, which it just didn't have the capacity now. So, oops. So in the project, there was really two alternatives that could have happened. The lift station could have been replaced and the downstream pipe could have been upsized, or a gravity sewer alternative could have been provided. The gravity sewer was chosen due to its reliability. There's no pumps to fail, reduced energy consumption, and the reduced maintenance needs of the pipe. When working with the city staff, the goals of the project really came out to be to minimize the project cost, to serve the expanded area, including a small area across the river. If I can go back up. A small area, where's my mouse go? In this area here, across the river, which currently has houses which isn't served by sanitary sewage. To minimize the impacts to the environment, minimize the impacts to private property, both in not impacting any developable land, reduce the amount of easements, and to minimize the impact to residents and businesses, including accesses to the business and interruptions to their services. The first thing we looked at was the existing alignment. So as it sits now, the lift station here goes through a force main and discharges into a 15-inch sanitary sewer in here, which that 15-inch sewer continues down. The line is undersized and too shallow. If this route was to be used, the entire stretch would have had to have been reconstructed with a larger and deeper line in place. Due to the tight corridor and the depth of it, the impacts to the businesses and the costs would have been very, very high. So this route was discarded.
I'd like to give some reference points right there. So you kind of went, so the lift station we're talking about is if you're coming in on Main Street into town past McDonald's, it's just past the bridge is where that is right there. That's the bridge, and the lift station is right there just past the bridge.
Yep, and it's basically right next to the vet office right there. So with the existing alignment not feasible, we looked at, so we need to get from the lift station ultimately to the downstream manhole. We looked at a few different routes. All of the routes pass through a common point right in this area. So upstream of that common point, 2 alternates were proposed, and downstream, 3 alternates were proposed. Upstream on Route A, the sanitary sewer would go from the lift station in the low area in the green space between the river and the vet clinic down to the common point. Route B upstream would follow the existing alignment for a short stretch and then down, I believe that's Quarry Street, in existing right-of-way as much as possible. Downstream from the common point, Route 1 is relatively close to the property line, but this route goes through a large amount of trees, a high point, and it does impact, or it would be very close to some businesses and I believe a house in there. Route 2 downstream would go from the common point, following the existing wood, the edge of the woods and the edge of the field, down to the common point, or the end point, trying to miss as much trees and depth as possible. And Route 3 would follow that same route roughly, except it would cut through the field to minimize the distance. It's just a comparison showing all 5 of the options, A, B, and 1, 2, and 3. For all the options, 21-inch pipe is going to be required to provide the ultimate service area. An access route will need to be provided for maintenance and access to all the manholes. Since this would be through various different private parcels, an easement will be required for the entire length. There will be tree removal for construction and access, and there will be temporary impacts to wetlands, no matter what route is chosen for this. So we looked at all of the goals that we had discussed with the city, and we created a decision matrix which had a lot of subcategories under each goal. We use this as a decision-making tool to to really weed out what was our best option. You know, some options or some categories were weighted higher than others, but when it all came down to it, it was determined that option 2A was our preferred alternative. So that one is the one that follows in the green space from the lift station down to the common point, and then follows the existing tree line on our way over. Also, I should note that the area for service across the river where there are existing homes without sanitary sewage is basically right across the river from this point here. So if, for them to be served, likely the river crossing would be right in that area. Option 2A was recommended. This is relating back to our goals originally. It was recommended because it relatively speaking, it has the lowest cost out of all of them due to it's the shallowest of all of the routes. So it's not as much excavation anyway, and we're also less likely to hit bedrock going through this. All other factors for cost were roughly comparable between the other options, and that even includes the length of pipe. While this option does look the longest now, when factoring in the eventual river crossing here, the lengths actually become quite comparable in the long run with the ultimate build out. Along with that, the river crossing, this one best allows our ability to expand to serve the entire service area. It has the deepest river crossing, which allows for an easier and safer river crossing with that. The environmental impacts on this are marginally higher than some of the other ones, but they're being quite minor compared to all of the other ones, and we already are impacting trees and wetlands with every option anyways. Private property and impacts to residents are they're roughly the same, or some of the private property impacts are actually slightly less because we aren't impacting any developable land and we are minimizing the impacts to any farmland. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ron.
So this evening on this particular item, and I think we're taking them with the lift station route initially and then the St. Croix Street Pond after that. So for the lift station routing, what we would do next is to refine our design a little bit and identify easements that would need to be acquired and begin working with property owners. There is some latitude in adjusting things a little bit within the basic concept of the route to address concerns that the property owners might have. But the idea is tonight to approve the basic route so that we can continue on with that. So with that, we would be happy to try and answer any questions.
I have a couple questions. We went through this design route that you were looking at a couple of months back. And I believe, and we were talking about it then, that the current capacity of lift station is okay. That today there's not a concern with the lift station, the way it's operating. Is that true?
The current capacity of the lift station meets the current capacity needs plus some additional, but doesn't have a lot of leeway for a lot of additional
Okay.
capacity.
Yeah. And I believe that's what we discussed the last time when we got together. My concern is, also a few months ago when we were meeting, we talked about the priorities of the utilities, all the different projects they had. And these two particular projects were categorized as NA. They weren't even a priority. So I'm trying to understand why we're talking about these if they weren't even a priority then, and now all of a sudden now they are a priority. I'm just trying to get clarification as to why these two projects are up in front of us this month. Does that question make sense, Kevin?
You remember, refer to where we talked about them not being applicable?
Yeah.
Was it during a budgeting time or?
Yeah, we had that. We had that city plan for the
CIPA,
Yeah,
the CIP
yep,
plan?
Yep. And those two projects are in that plan, but their priority was NA. And now we're talking about moving them up to, I don't know, maybe all of a sudden they seem to be more of a concern. So I'm just trying to get grounded.
No, Julie might have an answer for that.
I don't have an answer, and I apologize. These projects have been a high priority for the city for quite some time, and they were in our CIP, I think the previous one too.
And I
Yeah, that NA,
Yeah, and I went back and looked at it today just to make sure what I was looking at. That's why I'm confused as to.
yeah, sorry, I don't. What,
Kevin,
I believe you're looking at an attribute that is on the budget report, and I don't believe that field is consistently used throughout the budget report. It's one of the attributes that's in the program, and I suspect it just wasn't filled in, and so it was not available or something to that effect. You know, this interceptor project has been on again, off again for 15 years in the utility, and what's brought it, kind of back to life is as we start taking serious looks at bringing developments into our corporate parks, in particular Whitetail and Sterling Ponds both go through this sewer.
Is that the north section that on the map? Is that?
Yeah, both those corporate parks wind up in the lift station, and so you have constraints that are imposed by that, and it came to light, even just looking at some clients that were interested in locating in Sterling Ponds, that we really didn't have an option of talking further with them about whether they could bring their business to River Falls under the current situation, because the lift station is approaching its capacity, and the solution for dealing with that is a complicated solution that we're working through now, a multi-year solution to get something available. So I believe the NA you're talking about again is a lost attribute in the budget book that is not normally utilized.
If I may, on behalf of the City Council, this has been in front of us for about 2 years now. And yeah, it has to do with our wishing to develop the industrial parks, and if there is a business or a company that needs a lot of water, we can't accommodate them right now. So we wanted to keep our options open, and the lift station itself is going to become more and more expensive as time goes on. So it was being proactive.
And that makes sense, but so I was just trying, personally, I'm just trying to get grounded as to where how this all of a sudden is. I'm new to the board, obviously.
If you went back to the original plan that Ayers did, the comprehensive sewer study, in there there's a statement and anticipating this North Main lift station reaching capacity, and back then, in the mid-2000s when that was initially identified, they were identifying that being at capacity by this time. Because of the downturn we've had in development from 2008 to 12, it gained us a little latitude. It also gained us a little latitude because they did some work with the impellers at the lift station that did a better job with the ragging. So we bought a little time, but way back in the 2005 comprehensive sewer study, whatever the year was on that, it was a main item in there. So it's been in there since then. So.
okay, I did find your NA, and I apologize. It's in one of our reports. We have not used that priority number for a while, but some of them do have priority numbers. But these do not. They say NA, so I apologize for that. It wasn't meant to say that it wasn't a priority. If they're in this plan, it's a priority of the city, so.
So there's some dollars in the budget moving forward in 2017 for these?
These would be capital items in the wastewater treatment fund, and then also in the stormwater fund. So they would be capitalized, but once in the CIP, that means that we're planning on doing it, and we're we're trying to allocate funds for that.
Okay.
Nothing's final until it gets voted on by, you know, the
That was my
appropriate
next
boards and
question.
council.
Yeah.
But the intent, once it's in the CIP, is that we would go forward with that.
Okay,
So, okay,
okay.
thanks.
And do the two projects, the two resolutions, are they dependent on each other, or are they separate?
The sanitary sewer rerouting gives us an opportunity with the St. Croix Street Pond, outfall pond, because we're going to be working right there. That's where our connection is. We'll be working the sewer there. So as long as we're there mucking things up, it seems like a good opportunity to do that also. And so we'd like direction on both at the same time, but if there's more study to do on one or the other, we could do that.
And could you show me where you're going to cross the river? When we talked about this originally, there was a concern with crossing the river and the expense. But now that's part of this plan? You're going to cross it?
Well, not as part of this project. This project is making it available in the future if it's chosen to cross the river. There's the neighborhood down in this area that generally drains down to a low area right along in here. And so if you're going to collect that with sanitary sewer, and if you're going to take that across the river, it makes sense to make that crossing at that point. We looked at the river bottom in there and the elevation of the sewer that we're putting in there, and we think that we can get a gravity sanitary sewer across there. It's tight, but I think it can be done. If you wanted to cross at a different location, say at MM, that's much higher. And so you'd be taking the sewer to a spot where either you're really deep or you're using a lift station to get there. That's why we go to the low area to choose to cross.
But to go west for development, you would have to go under the river?
To the west is
Yes.
under the river, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't you just bring up the pink area,
There's one.
So the pink area that you see there is the north sewer area. And again, we didn't rip the previous studies apart as far as we're following the previous studies that identified that pink area as what wants to be served by River Falls Municipal Utilities with sewer. And it does go, if you could point with a pointer there.
To where? To
Across the river, this portion across the river
this
there,
area
right
down
there
here.
is, you know, in order to get that into the sewer, this is what we need to do. We need to have the interceptor close enough to the river to be able to get under the river in order to serve that area. If we were to throw away that area forever as far as being part of the city or wanting to be sewered with municipal services, then it would not be a factor, but we're really just following the previous plans and wanting to serve that area.
Is there consideration as to continued growth here and how long this would accommodate that?
And that's something we talked about the last time we were here when we were looking at pipe sizes for the area to the downstream. And it's the 15-inch pipe that's downstream that then turns to 18 will actually serve the area as it expands for quite some time, but the lift station and force main are under capacity, so those would have to be replaced. The 21-inch pipe should serve, and I'm trying to remember, there was the extended area, development area. It would serve that plus some additional. There was also, at the time of the AIRS report, a 1 mile out from that, and it doesn't quite do a 1 mile out, but the projected expansion, which should be like a 50-year expansion, it does serve that plus more.
So fully serve that pink area.
That was our compromise in our discussions. We talked about that mile out and thought that might be a little bit too much area. If we're already talking about this area being a 50-year area, we thought about accommodating a 75 or 80-year area to be a little bit overkill at this point in time.
In that pink area, you mentioned the area that's not served, and I'm new to the board as well, so I'll take whatever you say with a grain of salt, I guess. But I have lived in this town for quite a while, and if my understanding is correct, some years back, the project was delayed or obstructed for some reason due to a private property issue. Is that no longer the case? Am I misunderstanding that? And I believe it's in that area behind the big industrial building, River Falls Heating area, right across the river from there. So I know I see that easements is part of this. Do we have cooperation? Have we checked in with the neighbors? I mean, where are we at? And let me finish the thought. I'm excited for the business development that's happening. I think that's wonderful, but I'm very hesitant to put that above the rights of personal property owners. So that's my concern.
Right, and one of the next steps is to continue our discussions with the property owners. I've met with Mrs. Rugo, and we've talked about, in fact, she's here tonight.
Okay.
And we've talked about it. There are issues to work through, and we would need to acquire easements from them. And so it's not that we can come in and put this thing in tomorrow. There's a definite negotiation that needs to occur here.
A new discussion at this point? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, negotiation
yeah.
for the easements for the
Yeah.
work we're talking about, yes.
Okay.
That would be a new negotiation that has not occurred in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Am I correct in any of these routes would involve getting easements over private property?
The routes 1, 2, 3
Yeah.
do, and but routes A and B also require easements,
Okay, so they all do.
yes.
Any further questions or comments for?
I'll make another comment. I appreciated seeing the decision matrix. It made it very clear what was being considered, and I found it helpful. So thank you.
If there are no more discussion or questions, we'll consider Resolution 2016-19, which is the resolution recommending preferred concept for the St. Croix Street overfall.
No, for the
This would be
North
for the
Intercept-
North Interceptor resolution.
North Interceptor, yep.
18.
I move approval of resolution number 2016-18.
I'm on the wrong page. Okay. Did we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on Resolution 2016-18? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Resolution passes.
So move on to item 2B, which is the St. Croix Street outfall.
So again, we will have a small presentation by Matt. The circumstances are as I described before, and again, we will need easements for this project, and that would need to be negotiated with the property owner. But let me allow Matt to speak here.
Thanks, Ron. Let's see. Just page up and page down. Hello, I'm Matt Wassman, Water Resources Engineer with TKDA, and I'll be giving you a brief overview of the St. Croix Street outfall study that was performed. TKDA was retained by the City of River Falls to develop concept plans for the rehabilitation and expansion of the existing St. Croix Street outfall pond. The rehabilitation and expansion are needed to enhance its function of providing peak discharge rate control, total suspended solids, and total phosphorus removal. Sediments have accumulated to a point where the sediment capacity, capturing ability of the pond has been significantly reduced, and you'll see that here in a minute. Constructed in the late 1990, early 1991, the pond was constructed on permanent limited easement. The pond is bounded by an abandoned railroad embankment to the west, and this will all make sense when you see a figure. A commercial building and parking lot to the north, steep slopes to the east, and a ravine that drains to the Kinnickinnick River on the south. The abandoned railroad embankment to the west is what defines the floodway and the floodplain boundary. The existing St. Croix outfall pond treats about 91 acres of the city. For those of you not familiar with the location of the pond, this map gives you an idea of where it is in relation to the boundary, River Falls city boundary. It's right there. Here's an aerial map of the pond showing the floodplain and floodway boundaries. North is up on this map, or north is to the right on this map. And I'll point to the existing pond here. Let's see. Here's the existing pond. You can see it dark here. And then I just want to point out, this is the railroad embankment to the west. Here's the Kinnickinnick River to the south. And here's those steep slopes I was talking about to the east. And then here's a commercial building to the north. So here's the existing pond right there. And you can see here's St. Croix Street. And then here's North Main Street. This figure just shows the drainage area that contributes to that existing pond. And it's about 91 acres. And you can see it's shown in red. But it's a good, you can see it's, I don't know if it's easy for you guys to see here, but it's about a 91 acre drainage area. And again, on this map, north is up. So let's see, do you guys see the pond here? I think I might have lost the, you gotta shake it a little. I'll have to, yes. All right, so let me just see if I can get this mouse back. I'm not really getting the mouse in there, Ron, or Reed, do you see that? I do have a pointer too. Nope, there you go. Now I see it. Perfect. Okay. So the existing pond is right here. Here's the existing pond. This is the old railroad embankment to the east, or to the west, I'm sorry. And then this is that commercial building.
That's River Falls Industrial Center. The old coal pack building.
Okay. Here's a picture of the existing pond. What you can see here in this photo, this is the existing 12-inch perforated outlet, riser outlet, and then this is a larger outlet control structure. Where the pond gets to a certain level, it overflows into this existing structure, and this is just a trash, kind of a trash guard type structure. This picture here, again, you can see from this pic that the existing pond is completely filled with sediment and is in need of cleaning. We looked at a total of 5 proposed concepts. The first 2 concepts maximize the area between the railroad embankment, the parking lot to the north, the steep slopes to the east, and the Kinnickinnick River to the south. These 2 concepts were found to be infeasible, but I still want to just give you a brief overview of what they were, and a figure of these 2 concepts will be shown here in the next 2 slides. But both concepts, we looked at a 3-cell configuration for the pond, with 2 of the first 2 cells being wet ponds. The difference between the 2 concepts was in cell 3. Cell 3 of concept 1 included an filtration basin. For the last cell, And cell 3 of concept 2, in lieu of the infiltration filtration basin, we looked at using rock weepers. So here's a figure showing concept 1. As you can see, there's sorry about that. Just having some difficulties. All right, there we go. Maybe I should just use this here. Kind of. Should I just use this? Can you guys see that? But you guys won't be able to over there. So here, let me. All right, so you got cell 1 is a wet pond. This is a 48-inch storm sewer that basically picks up all of that 91 acres, comes through this 48-inch. It runs into cell 1, wet pond, cell 2, a wet pond, and then this is the cell 3. But actually, let me go up to concept 1. This is an infiltration filtration system, and then this is a berm. This is the Kinnickinnick River at the downstream end. So it's a 3-cell configuration. Maximizing that area of cell 3 allows for maximum water quality treatment, rate control, and volume control. So that's what we looked at this, to just maximize that entire area. There we go. This is stormwater treatment concept 2. Basically, cell 1 and cell 2 are the same. Cell 3 is using rock weepers in lieu of the infiltration filtration system. These rock weepers would be placed along the contour, avoiding large trees that provide the most shade. Low flows would discharge on the top and filter through the rock weepers, and then high flows would bypass and outlet directly into the ravine.
Could you describe what rock weepers are?
Yep, rock weepers. Yep, you're right. They're basically about 3 feet wide. It's just a bunch of rock piled up about this high.
Okay.
And there's some smaller stones and some larger stones, and water just has to filter through them.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a way to provide for stormwater treatment. It's being filtered through what
Like
we
an
call-
aquarium filter, but on a very big scale.
Mm-hmm.
But it also slows down the water and lets it pool up behind those weepers, allowing some to infiltrate into the ground, and that's what the
Slow it down
Kenny's-
and cool it off.
Slow it down, lets them infiltrate, cool off.
And infiltrate, you bet.
Okay, thank you.
The results of concepts 1 and 2, total suspended solids and total phosphorus removals were significantly improved from existing conditions. Peak discharge rates were significantly reduced from existing conditions, which is all positive. However, these 2 concepts were determined infeasible after we had a meeting with the DNR. So there was a site visit with the DNR was held on August 3rd, 2016, to discuss the 2 proposed concepts. As part of the site visit, we inspected the existing pond, and we walked the entire ravine downstream of the pond. And during the field walk of the ravine, we encountered multiple fresh cold water springs. The presence of these springs confirmed the Class 2 trout stream designation that was put on that ravine. And a result of these findings, concepts 1 and 2 were considered no longer feasible. We went back and we developed 3 additional concepts. And figures of those 3 concepts will be shown here in a minute. Concept 3, I'll just give you a quick overview of what they are. Concept 3 regraded the existing pond within the existing footprint to provide a wet pond with the maximum amount of storage for water quality purposes. Concept 4 included regrading the existing pond within the existing footprint, but also expanded the pond to the east This concept would require property acquisition. And then concept 5 is the same as concept 3, no longer expanding to the east, but we're converting the wet pond to a dry pond, dry infiltration pond. And converting that wet pond to a dry pond provided more storage for rate control. Here's a figure of concept 3, if I can get this thing to work again. Actually, what's that? Yeah, there we go. All right. So I'm going to run through all three, so you'll see the difference. Here's concept 1. Compared to the existing, we basically maximized the area. We used this, the steepest slopes that we could. We still put in a bench, but this is a wet pond, and we maximized the area. We went a little further north. We didn't really go south further, but we went as far as we could west and east, tying into this existing steep slope. Now you'll see the difference here between concept 3 and concept 4. Concept 4, we expanded to the east to try to provide even more storage, and we looked at the water quality results of increasing that pond and expanding east. And then concept 5, you can see we're basically back to the footprint of concept 3, sorry. You see that? We're back to the existing footprint of concept 3, but we converted it to a dry pond.
Can you,
Yep, go ahead.
I was going to say, so essentially will be a pond that doesn't have standing water in it? Is that the difference?
That's concept 5.
Yes.
It wouldn't have standing water in it. You got it.
Okay, so kind of like the detention basin or other similar.
Yep.
It would be dry unless the rain was coming.
It would be dry after a certain period of time. Yep, water would flow into it, it'd pond up, and then it would discharge out, and you'd eventually be dry, probably within 48 hours after the storm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
So the discharge would go down or
Yep.
just go
A
lateral?
portion of the smaller storms would come in, and they would just infiltrate. But you hit a certain storm, infiltration doesn't have the capacity to take it all, that it would start to discharge. But the discharge is controlled. We've got designs of all of the outlet control structures, so they'd all be controlled discharges. Yep.
Whereas the option 3 really doesn't have any infiltration?
You may still get some infiltration with option 3. I mean, even option 3 and 4, concepts 3 and 4, you will eventually get some infiltration into the soil profile, even with a wet pond, unless we were to line it. And we've had discussions about potentially lining these ponds to maintain a permanent pool. But at this point, we assume that concepts 3 and 4 are wet ponds and they'll hold a permanent pool.
Matt, Matt, on this concept 5,
Yeah.
were we not incorporating some type of drain tile enhanced filtration where it wouldn't necessarily be relying on infiltration, but it would be filtering through a media and then going through drain tiles and actually discharging then downstream?
That's exactly right. So Reed makes a good point. The details of concept 5, there is a media section that we were proposing below the pond bottom, and it might be a 30 to 36 inch media section, and in there is basically a sand material and perforated pipes. So the water would actually come into the pond, infiltrate through this sand media. Some would get into the soil profile and infiltrate completely. Some of it would actually get into these, call them 8-inch perforated pipes. And after the water is cooled and treated through that filtration media, it would discharge. So that is part of concept 5, is the filtrate the media section with some drain tile. Yep, good point. Here's a brief summary of the water quality results for concepts 3, 4, and 5 compared to existing conditions. And I don't know if you can see those numbers, but concept 3 had slight increases in total suspended solids removal and total phosphorus removal compared to existing. Concept 4 had even more increases in TSS and TP removal, of course, it made sense because we expanded the size of the pond. Concept 5 had the most total suspended solids removal and total phosphorus removal of all 3 concepts. This table provides a peak discharge comparison of concepts 3, 4, and 5 compared to both existing conditions and pre-developed conditions. We originally were trying to see if we could design a system that would actually match pre-developed conditions. Concepts 1 and 2 that were thrown out, we were getting fairly close to matching pre-developed conditions for some of the lower storms. Concepts 3, 4, and 5, however, we're not able to achieve pre-developed conditions, but we are able to reduce discharges from existing conditions for all 3 of those concepts. And they all have comparable results. When it comes to rate reduction, they're all fairly comparable. So just to summarize what we talked about here, concepts 1 and 2 were eliminated due to the springs and the trout stream designation. The increase in TSS and total phosphorus removal and peak discharge rate reduction that concept 4 provided over 3 was not large enough, we felt was not large enough to justify the acquisition, property acquisition, and also the increased excavation. There'd be a lot more excavation expanding that pond to the east. And then concept 5 converted the wet pond of concept 3 to a dry pond, a dry, call it infiltration filtration pond. And I say infiltration / filtration because you're going to get both. Increasing the storage volume, resulting in increased TSS and TP removal and rate reduction from concepts 3 and 4. So our recommendation is to move forward with concept 5. And I just want to point out concept 5 could always be converted to a wet pond in the future if some of the maintenance requirements for this filtration infiltration system were found to be,
Expensive.
yes, excessive, exactly.
Well,
Yep, you bet.
That brings a question. The dry pond, does it have to be excavated on a regular basis? I mean, I assume it fills up after a while.
Yes, so just in general, real rough.
Yeah.
It's been about, that existing pond was constructed in early 90s. Has it been cleaned since? Probably not. We usually throw out a number of every 20 years. Usually you design wet ponds to have capacity to handle sediment for approximately 20 years.
Okay.
These infiltration filtration systems, if we design it, we'd probably design it every 5 years. You'd have to get in there and scrape off the top layer of sediment that might accumulate on that media section.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a rough number. Instead of 20 years, it might be every 5 years, but you're getting enhanced treatment. But those are just real rough.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, can you elaborate just a little bit? This concept 3, 4, and 5, you have the comparison table that you just went over, and you showed it being better than the existing pond, slightly better.
The rate control one?
The rate controls, I believe we're actually intentionally capturing more drainage that does not currently get directed to the pond into this configuration. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate, yes. So if I look at this drainage area map of existing conditions, there is about a 4.5 acre site here to the north of the pond that actually drains. You can see an arrow here. It drains through a 24-inch outlet, a storm sewer, and it actually bypasses the existing pond. As part of our proposed concepts, we are looking to pick up that 24-inch pipe and route it through the pond. We don't want it to bypasses right now, and it runs on the west side of that old railroad embankment. So we would be picking that up.
I'd like to ask some questions. I want you to tell me when the pond was put in. You said 1992?
The
holding pond.
record drawings that we have were dated I believe, so we're figuring it was constructed
I'm sorry.
in 91.
You're wrong. You're wrong. 1972.
So in 91,
You have the,
Didn't have
you have
discussion
the
with her.
easement for that pond, that holding pond?
mhm.
When it was it was 1972, never been cleaned, never been cleaned. But I see you went, did you have recommendation from the DNR to go in there and clean that pond? Did you?
So this would have to be, those questions would have to be addressed to them.
Well, I want to address that to
City.
them right here, so they know what's going on.
Mhm.
Also, that pipe that you're talking about that comes out from that old Colpack plant.
That 24-inch pipe on the north side?
There is no easement for that, but they run the water onto our property, and there's no easement for any of it.
Yeah, we're looking to pick that up
How
with
can I
this
be sure
concept.
of any of this coming through my property, that you're gonna hold to your word now?
Right now, we're dealing with this gentleman and the advisory board. The public had a chance to speak earlier on any subject, so let's continue.
So that, just to address the 1990-91, there were some plans put together for a pond in 1990-91, and the outlet control structure was all designed and the downstream, so there may have been a pond there previously, but there was some work, correct me if I'm wrong, work done in 1990-91 compared to that existing plan that we have. So, limited easement is where this pond was built on. So this pond may fall. Yeah. Again, I'm not sure the easements that are over this existing pond.
Part of our process here is we've engaged a land acquisition firm that specializes in this. If you recall back here a year ago when we laid out the whole plan, our intent is to document what easements we have for existing facilities and where we lack any easements for existing facilities. I know for a fact there are easements in and around this pond area. Whether they cover the exact footprint of the pond, that would be something we would want to determine before we do anything else out there. So some of those details would be forthcoming. Downstream, there's all sorts of questions with regard to the existing sewer main that was constructed in the early 70s. The sewer did go in I believe, 71. And I've seen no evidence of any easement over the existing sewer area, but what we want to do is do a thorough title search, make sure that is the fact. If that is the fact, we need to do what's right and acquire easements for operating a sewer that's been operating for 40 years. We could talk about prescriptive easements, things like that. The suggestion has been, no, we should go back in time and identify easements that should have been acquired in 70 before it went in and do that. So that's the work plan that was laid out, again, for the benefit of some that were not on here, back in November. And we certainly could, we need to take our steps. And so our step right now is when we go and do the work, looking at the big picture, including where the pipe currently lies south of there, we want to know, we also want to identify necessary easements that we need for a new alignment or a revised pond. And that's, the step we're at tonight is to pick those preferred alternatives so we can identify necessary easements there. And now we have an opportunity to go to the various landowners and say, here's the complete picture, here's what we can't find any record of from 71. Here's what we're proposing to do in the coming years. I need additional easement for that. And you go through the formal process that's laid out by state statutes for negotiating with property owners, paying them to get easement, or paying them to get their own appraisals, things like that. And again, the city is not going to be involved in that. We're, again, working with professionals that do that routinely, and the gentleman Dave has met with all the property owners that we anticipated could come into play on this already as far as an introduction goes. So it's they're all steps that that lead to an eventual implementable plan to be able to deliver sewer service to the North Sewer Service area.
Can I, just at the very end of what you said there was an implementable plan, and at this point, that is what we're discussing, is just planning phases. We're not setting dates for starting anything.
Nope.
Or, yeah, I just simple clarification. I think we
Next,
should-
you know, what would come next, again, with a preferred alignment, with preferred concept, we can do additional engineering and determine what those footprints of easements are. Then we're going to be coming back and going to the city council for authorization to move forward with negotiations with property owners. At that point, that will be probably a fairly long period of time and an unknown directions that will go.
I have a couple questions. There was no cost in any of these preferred options. So am I to assume that concept 5 is the most expensive option?
I think what we should, concepts 3 and 5 are very, very similar. One's dry, infiltration, filtration, the other one is wet. We should look at both of those concepts and then look at the upfront costs and then also the long-term maintenance costs. Because I think those are very close. 3 and 5 are very close when it comes to water quality results. So,
And I mentioned that for the board to try
Yes.
to understand, we're making a recommendation on concept 5 or what, and also this route A and 2 for the lift station, and there's no cost in any of those examples either. So obviously, for us to make a recommendation, it'd be nice to see some understanding of what those costs are. And the other thing I thought about was, you got the Kenny Connect Corridor project also going on currently, or is it kind of in motion? Do these all relate, or do they not relate? Are they totally separate?
Those are all, I mean, great points. So just a few clarifications. That the sewer routing study, cost is definitely a consideration. It's the top one on the comparison chart. But again, it's relative cost. We know, you know, in one alignment, you're burying sewer through a street, you're ripping up Main Street, diverting traffic on Main Street, and other routes you're not doing that. So it's a relative cost index that's been put on that. And it's appropriate to look at cost on the sewer routing because you're trying to solve a fairly simple concept. You have a lift station that wants to be replaced by a gravity line from point A to point B. There's various ways to going from point A to point B. They all accomplish the same thing. They all carry the same amount of sewage and have the same, you know, the same end game kind of. With these stormwater ponds, it's a little different because what we're trying to do there, the concepts aren't equal. So if we had costs on there, it wouldn't be fair to look at the cost because the functionality of them is considerably different. The first 3 concepts, or 2 concepts, if they could have been constructed, would have been hugely more expensive, but they perform way better from an environmental protection standpoint. So it gets a little more complicated with the pond. We're looking to extract the best stormwater treatment we can in that area, since we're ripping it up anyway to do the sewer. So yes, it's related to the sewer because we're going to rip the area up to get a sewer connection in there. Now when we put the pond back together, we want it to function as best as we can make it function. Does it relate to the corridor plan? It relates to the corridor plan too, because we're in the river corridor here. So, but I don't think what we're talking about here is really in play in the corridor plan per se. You know, the corridor plan isn't going to say bury the sewer here, bury the sewer there. It's a gravity, sewer service underground, needs to work a certain way. It's related, yes, but each is a little different.
Quick
Any
question.
more questions or discussion?
Quick question. Has the DNR looked at options 3, 4, and 5, and do we have an okay on those? Or-
The DNR has not seen 3, 4, and 5 yet. We are basically not going any further downstream than the existing berm, so we're staying within the footprint of the existing pond. We're just doing some things with the slopes, going a little deeper, doing certain things within the same footprint. So we don't anticipate them having any issues, but absolutely they will be involved. Yep, you bet.
We ready to consider resolution number 2016-19, the resolution recommending the preferred concept for the St. Croix Street overfall?
I'll move approval of resolution number 2016-19.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the resolution say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Resolution passes. To item 3 in our agenda. Kevin, I think, is going to give us some information on this.
Yes, this is variable frequency drive motor for well number 5. About a month ago, Ron Groth, our wastewater and water superintendent, gave a presentation on this item, so I didn't really want to revisit the presentation today, but I'll just remind everybody. So this is well number 5, which is on West Division Street. I'm trying to think, near DeSanctis Park. We have a well right along Division Street near DeSanctis Park. That well feeds 2 major subdivisions out there, Quail Ridge and Rolling Hills, about 200 homes. And it's been interesting that we had a neighborhood discussion from some folks who live out there. They said that they noticed water pressure drops and then high water pressure increases while showering. It was something that we weren't really aware of. We took their comments. We did some testing and monitoring of well number 5. And in our testing and monitoring, we did notice some spikes and then decreases in water pressures. So those folks were 100% correct. Ron and I did a little bit of research and figured out that we could put a variable frequency drive motor at this well, which would increase water pressures gradually. And when the pump stops running, decrease water pressures gradually, which will keep an even pressure while showering. The cost of this, believe it or not, we're doing it for, I think, about $17,000. The number's in here. I don't have it in front of me. But we're also able to get some grants from Focus on Energy and then some matching grants as well. We're also able to save a significant amount of electricity costs because of the type of motor it is. The simple payback on this will be about 6 months. So we're going to solve water pressure problems in Quail Ridge and Rolling Hill subdivisions in that area, out by DeSanctis Park. And we're able to get a little over $10,000 in grants and funding to do this project. And we're able to save a significant cost of electricity annually to do this as well. It's a win-win-win, and we're doing this project, which I think is a great, so that's a great story to tell about how a neighborhood can comment to their local utility. We listen, we research, and now we're going to go in and do this variable frequency drive motor that's going to help the situation at a very reasonable cost. So that's the rundown, and we're excited to do it, and we got a couple bids, and Ron's happy with the company that's getting the bid, and they're going to do all the installation and do that yet this year. Ron, is that correct? Going to try to get that done yet this year.
Move approval of resolution 2016-20.
Second.
Motion and a second for the approval of resolution 2016-20. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the resolution say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Resolution passes. Move to item 4, which is the summary and the financial statements. I don't know if Julie wants to comment on these, or
I
if
don't
they're
have,
self-explanatory.
I don't have much to comment tonight. Tracy Biederman has prepared information on electric, water, sewer, and stormwater, and she's done some comparisons with prior years and tried to explain the differences. All funds look good at this point. This is through October, so I can try to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Julie? Was a well-made report. Not, we'll move on to item 5, which are the charts showing the municipal utility dashboard. And make note of our goal for 10% of customer appreciation on the renewable energy, that we are at 8.85, is that right?
You're getting real close to 10, 8.85. 552 customers are subscribing to the $3 a month volunteer energy block, so it's outstanding.
Can I ask a question on the dashboard? On the water sales? The water sales in gallons for October were 29,000, just north of 29,000. And the water pumped gallons was 32,000. And the influent flow was 40,000. Does that make sense?
So I'm looking, hold on.
Yeah. And I probably don't understand it. So we're pumping more than we're selling, and we have more going to influent, and
Well, we could pump more than we sell. We know that. I do know we did a test at Gulfview. We did a new containment facility outside the outfall, and we ran quite a few thousand gallons that day that were unmetered. So that was pumped water, right, Ron? Go ahead.
I'm just trying to understand
No,
the
that's good.
information.
So that's one place where water could go. But Ron might have some more on that.
Yeah, I think if you look at our PSC report every year, and every utility is the same, there's a certain amount of water loss. You always pump more water than what you sell. You know, it's inherent in a water system. As many miles of water main as we have, you have small leaks here and there. Throughout the course of a year, it adds up. And I think what you're seeing at for the wastewater plant, the influent is higher than the gallons sold. And it's probably things like groundwater getting into the collection system. So that's why we do these things like the slip lining. You know, that's a big reason to try to keep that inflow, and repairing manholes. That's another way to keep the inflow out. As we do more of that maintenance work, you should see those numbers get closer and closer. So,
Thank you. I was just trying to understand.
Sure.
Looking at the numbers, if they make sense.
They do, and also they identify potential issues in our system, leaks and things like that.
Number 6 is the municipal utilities monthly report. Anyone have question regarding the information received here?
How close is the construction to being complete at the wastewater treatment plant?
We are real close. We moved our DAF thickener over, and Ron told me earlier today that I think that's going to go online Wednesday, potentially. Is that accurate, Ron? So, yeah, so that plant should be fully operational in their new phases by the 1st of December, you think? 90% by the 1st of December. So, and hats off to Ron and to Myron. That project is coming in under budget and pretty much right on schedule. So,
Kevin, there was a letter that went out to the people out by the solar garden. Yes.
yeah, I have that here, a postcard showing the 3 options on that.
Get any feedback from
Yes.
that survey out to
Yes,
those
I was
people?
talking to my assistant Christy today. We had 6 or 7 people email me on that, and they were all positive comments. They liked option 3 on the postcard, which was the screening and the landscaping. So that we had one comment about there was some installation going on last week. I think we did plant some of those bushes and trees last week because of the high winds and weather coming in, so they dug a few of those in last week, and that was also one of the comments. They noticed that. But other than that, people engaged. I didn't have one negative email or phone call regarding that. So I had a handwritten letter with a neighbor that had some valid comments and kind of a historical look at all that. And the letter also said they liked option 3 without the grasses. So.
Is there any part of number 6 in the monthly reports that anyone wants to ask a question or get more information on?
I'll just say too, the cell antennas on Sycamore Water Tower, that project, that's almost complete as well. We have one more or 2 more, one more. And that should be up here in a week or so. So all the telecommunications companies are back on the tower, and that project is pretty much wrapped up.
And Kevin, could you or perhaps Adam note the upcoming Kinney Quarter project
Love to do
event?
I have it, Adam, if you
I have
want
it
to.
too.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
All right.
Adam.
All right. The City of River Falls and the Kinney Corridor Project Committee, which I'm a member of, we're hosting a community kickoff event on Thursday, December 8th from 6:30 to 8 p.m., and that is in the lower level of the library. It's kind of a 2-for-1 deal. You get the library's annual open house, as well as our event, which is going to be interactive children's games, refreshments. Community experts will be there. People from the committee will be there. There's about 16 of us. I think it's about 4 to 5 city staff, as well as about 11 of us from the community that are part of this committee. And it's a great time to come see what we're just in the infancy of the whole thing, working on a mission statement and hopefully moving things forward. It's a project. It's a long-term project. It's not a thing that we're wrapping up in the next year or so. It's a very long-term thing. So come out and explore, understand, and engage.
Any other announcements for the group? Not, we look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned.